The first two lines of Homer's The Odyssey are really significant. There's a lot that we can glean from them for the rest of the entire text if we just pay attention. The first word is andra, which means man, which is already different from the Iliad, where the first word is meaning, which means anger or rage, sing of the rage of Achilles, etc. That's how the Iliad begins. In the Odyssey, the rhapsode, or the author, Homer, let's assume, says, andra moi ennepe, musa. So say of the man, muse, and we don't know which muse that is. Is it Clio, or is it perhaps even the mother of the muses? Is it Mnemosyne? Is it memory herself who is here called upon to sing, but not just through the rhapsode as a mere medium, but in fact as the singer, the author, the rhapsode, as Homer tells us, andra moi ennepe. So the moi is significant here, the dative case, where we see that the rhapsode is now perhaps this more awareness of himself. Sing to me, muse, and then I sing to the listeners, or say to me and I say unto them. So this depicts a rise in human consciousness, a coming to be aware, an awakening of human consciousness, which is itself also the very story of the Odyssey itself. The Odyssey tells the story of a man who, from cunning intellect, to put it simply, becomes wise and becomes an archetype, or a prototype rather, of, I say prototype, so he becomes the first. He's not yet given. There's no archetype that is simply given. He becomes the first who is exemplary of what the Greeks will later call paideia, which we translate as formation or Bildung in German. This is who Odysseus is. He becomes, his spirit rises above and he becomes a wise man through his meanderings, through his wanderings, but also through his guidance by Athena and through his deep connection with memory, which is what leads me to believe that the muse here addressed is in fact the mother of the muses, is Mnemosyne. One of the major themes of the Odyssey is in fact a relationship between remembering, recollection, memory, and of course also forgetting. It could very well be, for example, that Odysseus forgets himself, or that this could happen. It doesn't happen. He does return as himself. He doesn't become nobody. He doesn't become a hollow man. He becomes himself. He becomes who he is on this very journey. And upon his return, he restores his household. He restores the patriarchy. He restores good hierarchy, the good, holy, sacred order of the house of Ithaca, and thus also reinstates the order of the cosmos by extension. Now let's consider also the word polutropos. Poly, you know the word, as a polymath, for example, is someone who has learned a lot, who's studied a lot, who's known in many different disciplines. So poly just means many, as you know, and tropon means ways or turns, perhaps even something like character, etc. And sometimes that's translated as the man of many devices. I think Fagles translates as of many twists and turns, which is interesting. And Lattimore, for example, translates simply as of the man of many ways. And I think that's the most elegant translation in contemporary English, because it doesn't just address Odysseus himself. And we have a tendency, we want to know, who is he? What is his character? And we want to look at him in terms of a template of, or maybe even any action in terms of a template of the relationship between action and passivity. or activity and passivity, but that wouldn't be a very Greek way perhaps of considering this. We should perhaps rid ourselves of the active-passive distinction or template, that schemata, and rather think of it in a different way. Odysseus is necessarily polutropos of many ways because he suffers many different ways, many different fates, you could almost say. One fate, of course, but which takes many different turns for him, and he has to respond to those terms. That response is an activity, and that feeds back into what happens to him. So he doesn't just defy his fate, or he isn't just purely free from anything. This is the so in the word polutropos itself is encapsulated the way in which to approach, I think, the entire poem, which is why if you translate this as, for example, as complicated, you reduce, if anyone were to do this ever, one would reduce this crucial beginning of the Odyssey to just a feature of a man, a rather arbitrary feature that wants to tell us something about what he's supposedly like, and what we are ultimately then as readers to think of him. But in fact, what we are to think of here is that he is the one who suffers the many ways and responds to the many ways, hence becomes himself of many ways in order to turn all of this into one, rather to put it more in more English terms, to unify all that happens to him and all that he thus becomes, so that in the end he is still Odysseus, still recognizable by Penelope, his beloved wife who waits for him until his return, and also makes sure that it is truly him and that he remembers who he is. And so the polutropos man is still a unified man. We must keep this in mind. Even just the first two lines, we could spend hours and hours and hours on it, which we just might do during the first seminar of my upcoming course on the Odyssey. By the way, the link to enroll is in the description of this video. I hope to see you there. Thanks.